Today I'm going to be taking you guys through a method that is probably going to be extremely unpopular, and I can feel it from the start. This is just me exploring this strategy to see what it's like and how it adjusts and how it works and how the market prices change throughout the course of a game. It is extremely tricky. You need to have a very dull game for this to work, and one goal will more than likely absolutely kill off your whole profit. It won't completely kill the trade, which is why I'm still calling this a trade. It's not just a bet, but it is very, very borderline and will be very risky. But before I get into showing you guys exactly what this strategy is, please, if you are new and you see any strategy on this channel that you think you like the look of, if you want to try it out, do some extra research behind it. I am not very good at Betfair trading. I'm trying this out as a beginner to see what strategies I enjoy. Then when we find a few, I'll focus in on them and get to learn them a little bit better. I use all my strategies on here with very small stakes because I'm not comfortable going in with a lot of money. I'd recommend you do the same if you don't have that big of a bankroll, or if you're just a beginner like me. If you've got any recommendations you want me to try out, or any hints and tips about any that I've already tried out before, I'm always welcome to suggestions down there below in the comments. Please don't take any of this as serious advice on what to do in these situations, because like I said, I am just a beginner when it comes to trading. Please do further research on any method I suggest before you get started. And once we've got all that out of the way, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button whilst you're down at the bottom of the video, because it will make a huge difference to me as a creator. It'll allow me to bring in some more money, which will mean I can do some more trading videos, which will mean we can try out some different strategies together as well. So please do that if you haven't already. Thank you, and let's get into this trade. So this trade is similar to the under 2.5 goals trade that I absolutely love, that I know quite a lot of people aren't too keen on because of how volatile the market is and how one goal really sways your profit and loss in such negative directions when only just one goal's gone in. But I really like it. I like the fact that you can generate some quite consistent profit. The amount of games that stay 0-0 10, 15, 20 minutes into a game is quite large. It's a lot more than what you'd expect. And the amount of games that even then go on at half time to only either be 1-0 either side or 0-0 still is quite drastic. When we were looking at researching for games before, we saw that the majority of games actually finish 0-0 at half time, and then it's the second half where the goals come. So I quite like the under 2.5 goal strategy. But then I thought to myself, surely if the under 2.5 goal strategy, you're just needing a game to stay 0-0 for as long as possible, why not be a bit more risky? Why not drop that down? Because we all know if you want to really be focused and really not lose any money at all and just make a tiny bit of profit, you can go up to the under 3.5 goals method, and you can use that, and then one goal doesn't necessarily kill off your trade. You can still make a nice tiny bit of profit, possibly a better profit if your stakes a bit higher, maybe because the risk's a bit lower. But if you're willing to risk more, why not drop down to this 1.5 goal market? Now yes, in this scenario now, a goal doesn't no longer have the option to still make you a profit. If you're in the under 2.5 goal market, you can sometimes stay in or double down every method like that when it's at the under 2.5 goal section. But when you're at the under 1.5, one goal is really going to eat into your profit and make it essentially unsalvageable unless the game finishes 1-0. And even then, you're probably still not going to get great odds until very late on in the match. But I think the under 1.5 goal market, if you're feeling a little bit risky and fruity, it can be quite beneficial. So what I decided to do was, I didn't do any research. Normally when I try out a strategy that I haven't tried before, what I like to do is just pick 3 games at random. I'd never recommend this, of course, but I pick 3 games at random, put in a really small stake in each of the games, and I like to watch how the odds adjust during the game. I like to see what happens if it goes wrong, if it goes well, what happens at certain points in each game, how the odds change. I like to do that because it helps me learn the scenarios and helps me see how I'd react in each situation. So that's exactly what I did with this trade. I chose 3 random League One games that were going on at the time, put in a £5 stake in each of them for the under 1.5 goal market, and then we waited for the games to kick off. So let me just show you the games we got available to us here. We got Chef Wed Gillingham, where as you can see, we got in at the under 1.5 goal market for quite a low, or quite high odds I should say. We were over 4.0 for each of these games. That's the reason I thought I'd look into this market, because of how high the odds are for these. We know how quickly the odds drop in under 2.5 goals. I wanted to see what the scenario was with the under 1.5 goals and see how long we'd have to stay in the trade before we could make a similar profit in the under 2.5 market, because we know with it under 2.5 I normally like to stay in there for my 10% and then get out of the market. I know most people sometimes stay till half time and things like that, but I like to just stay till I've got my basic 10%, get out, take my profit. Nice and simple. Or if a goal goes in, I double down, wait till I break even, and then get out of the market as well. Depending on the stats, of course. But you can see we were at 4.4 odds in the Chef Wed Gillingham game. We were at 4.4 odds as well in the Argyle or Accrington Stanley versus Plymouth game. I knew there was an Argyle somewhere in there. And then Ipswich Oxford, I don't know why I skipped past that so quickly. Ipswich Oxford, we got in at a mix of 4.4 and 4.3. So you can see the odds are really quite high for the under 1.5 goal market, with obvious reason as well, because obviously it is a very unlikely market. However, there is quite a little bit matched there. Obviously, it's not a huge amount. These were just midweek League One fixtures during the national break, so don't take the liability there as something that might be a problem. It might be, of course, but with higher profile games, you're never really going to have an issue with liability, probably in any market. So this was as the games kicked off. You can see we've already lost like 10% on pretty much all three of the stakes there before kickoff. So with this one, it might be worth just waiting until literally the game kicks off before you get into it. And that is something to keep note of. I have got an alternative to this strategy as well, a little bit into the game, that I think could really get some nice profit, but it really is a risk. That one is one goal and you're completely done. You have no option. But I'll let you know when it comes to it. You might think I'm absolutely mental for even suggesting it. You probably will. But I still think it's worth a go, and we'll definitely be doing a video on it when I get there. So let me just keep going here. We'll go to see if a goal happens or if they stay 0-0, and I'll update you on how much profit and loss we would have made as the games go on. So 5 minutes into the games then, let's just take a quick look around at the profit and loss scenarios that are going on. All three were still 0-0 here. We had Accrington Stanley versus Plymouth, where as you can see we'd made about 32 pence, which is not too bad of a return. It's closing in on that 10%, obviously 10% here being 50 pence profit because we're only in with a £5 stake. So after about 5 minutes, we pretty much got our 10%-ish. So taking about half the time as what it would normally take in the under 2.5 goal market. Obviously, tempo of the match and everything depending. But roughly here you can see it's took about half the time of the odds. And we'll have a look at both the graphs a bit later on. However, you can see over here on the Ipswich-Oxford game, despite being the exact same minute, ignore what it says on Betfair, it was about 4 or 5 minutes in, we were down at a 30 pence loss. Now, you get this, of course, even in the under 2.5 goal method. If a game is lively, if a goal looks likely, or if the teams are just completely unmatched, it is going to take some time before the odds start dropping. So that isn't a worry most of the time. So this one might have just been a little blip, but the way we can find out is by looking at the Chef Wed game against Gillingham to see what the odds are looking like for that one. And you can see for that one we're also down at a loss, but less of a loss than the other. So there's a nice variety there of the matches, which is why I like doing this with new strategies. It helps me see what's going on and how things differ. And it helped me learn one key thing about this strategy. And if I just show you guys the graph, I don't show it for quite some time actually. But when I looked at the graph for all of these markets, I took a look at the graph for the under 1.5 goals method and the under 2.5 goals. And what I noticed long term throughout the game was that the under 2.5 goal method had just a nice easy decline pretty much from the first minute. It just gradually slowly went down. But with the under 1.5 goal method, you kind of had a bit of a straight line. Your value stayed quite similar instead of dropping down. But then after a point, and that point was roughly about 6-7 minutes into the game, the drop started to happen, and the drop is a lot quicker and a lot more drastic than the under 2.5 goals. I think this is just because even though time has passed with the market, under 1.5 goals is still quite likely because there's not that many goals required. Whereas the under 2.5, if a goal hasn't come in the first 5-10 minutes, then that looks really unlikely. So what I was thinking with this under 1.5 goal strategy might be a nice way around early goals costing you a loss, is waiting for that point. So if we can get a bigger sample size maybe of games in the under 1.5 goal market, we might be able to learn at what minute is the tipping point. At what minute does that graph stop being horizontal and start to plummet down? If we can figure out at what point that is, then we might be able to, in a way, kind of scalp the market. We might be able to just quickly get in and out before the drop and after the drop, just in a nice little quick instance, so that we don't have to worry about taking a loss if a goal, because we know a goal wouldn't come within like them 30 seconds or something. But I wasn't able to exactly pin down at what point the market does change too much. I think it is around the 10th-ish minute of a game, because after that it looks unlikely that there's going to be too many goals in the game, and then the odds do start to plummet quite drastically. So I think if you were using this strategy a bit longer term, it might be better getting in after that 10 minutes. If you did that with the under 2.5 goal market, you're going to lose out on quite a huge bit of profit. But I think with the under 1.5, it's actually going to help you generate quite a bit more than what you would normally get. Now you can kind of see what I mean here by that. You can see that with the Accrington Plymouth game, despite being about another 4 or 5 minutes on here, the odds are still quite similar. There hasn't been much of a change. We've had the similar amount of profit as what we had in the last little section. But then with the Ipswich-Oxford game and the Sheffield-Gillingham game, we were starting to see a little bit of profit. We were only down 2 pence there with Ipswich-Oxford, but Sheffield-Gillingham, we were down 11 pence, and I think in the next like 2 or 3 ticks, we actually go up quite a bit of profit in both the games. So it shows that the market doesn't move as much as you'd probably expect with this until you hit that point, and then after that point, the odds start to massively plummet. So it's definitely worth us trying to figure out at what point that is. So if I show the graph there, you can see the odds stayed very similar, very horizontal, not much change at all. So it is definitely worth keeping an eye on that longer term. Again, with the Ipswich-Oxford one, you can see just pretty much a straight line. A few drops and rises here and there, but in the general scheme of it, you've got pretty much a straight line, despite the fact that in the exact same game, the under 2.5 goal market has already had quite a bit of decline, and you probably would have made about your 10% profit already. So it is just all about the fact that you need to know when to time this market. You need to know when to get in. It's not a case of getting in straight from kickoff in this market. It's a case of getting in just before the odds start to drop, which I know sounds very stupid because that's what you want to do in every market, and whenever you can predict that, it's going to help. But you can see there instantly with the Accrington Plymouth one, despite only being about 30 seconds, we've had a double of our profit as it ticked over from the 9th to 10th minute. I don't know if it's going to be exactly the 10th minute onwards, maybe if we get in from the 8th minute onwards or something like that. But when I looked at the SofaScore at the timing, you could see that it had just pretty much ticked over to the 10th minute. And as soon as it did that, our profit pretty much doubled and we got into the 10%. It's definitely worth consideration. I don't think this will be a long-term solution, a long-term strategy for like how with 2.5 goals you can kind of go in and stay till half-time if you feel comfortable. I think this one is very much we need to learn that tipping point, get in a few ticks before, get in a few ticks after, and then maybe we'll get 5-6% here and there if we try and scalp the market. Now just to showcase here how I don't think the tipping point will be the same for every game, you can see in the Accrington Plymouth game, the game that has had the best odds drifting throughout this video out of all 3 of the games, you can see we've actually now at this point made £1.15 profit, which from a £5 stake is quite a nice return. If we'd have gone in with £50, we'd be looking at about a £10 return already. If we'd gone in with £100, we'd be looking at like a £20 return from that. So it is quite a nice, decent chunk of return, a nice 20%-ish. So that is quite a decent little chunk. But then if we look over the Ipswich-Oxford game, despite being the same minute, still 0-0, it is only 10 pence profit. So you can kind of see how there is a tipping point in the games, because we've hit that in the Accrington Plymouth game. There's a certain point where the odds are just going to plummet because the under 1.5s doesn't look as desirable anymore, but it just doesn't hit at the same point in each game. I think it genuinely will become active in a game between probably the 7th and 15th minute. I think if you're in the market from the 7th minute until possibly the 20th minute and no goal comes, I think you're looking at an incredible profit from this market. But I would never recommend staying in as long as that. I think we need to try and figure out the best strategy to get this to work, because I think we could be onto a nice little strategy here. And then if we look at the Sheffield Gillingham game, you can see we're actually still at a loss in this one. So it really shows the huge variation you've got with the games like this. I think 100% you have to be watching these games. You can't base it on stats and how the games are going. You need to be watching these live with a strategy as risky as the under 1.5 goal market. But I think there's definitely some opportunity here for profit. So let me take you to the end of all these trades and the exact moments I cashed out. And if we take a look at the graphs at the end as well, just to see at what point there was some switching going on. So with the Accrington Plymouth game, it got to £1.25 profit, and at that point I decided we can't turn that down. So I got out of that for a nice profit there. It's around 20% profit, I believe. In fact, I think on the amount we cashed out at £1.26, it was exactly a 25% return, because the game ended up with £1.25, I think, when I was inputting it in my spreadsheet. So an exact 25% return on that one. Over at Ipswich Oxford, we're up 23p, and down, I believe it was 6p there on the other game. But you can see there, 23p, instant jump there to 34 just a few seconds later. So there is certain jumping points where the odds change drastically. Now you can see in the other games, there was already a goal in the Milton Keynes game versus Cambridge game. So I did eventually look at that graph just to see how that game went on and adapted based on the odds. And it is quite drastic if a goal comes. If a goal comes, your stake is pretty much all gone. Which is why we need to figure out when to time the drop, so that even if we do occasionally get 1 or 2 losses, hopefully the return we get from the games, when we have timed our profit correctly, we should be able to get a nice return so that it doesn't eat into our total amount of profit too much. You can see there, 34p, still sat at quite nicely for the Ipswich Oxford game, and then the Sheffield Gillingham game was still at a loss. And just to show you here the graph for the Accrington Plymouth game, you can see that it did stay fairly similar for about here. And then here all of a sudden there was a big drop. I think with the odds of under 1.5, you're going to just get a few horizontals and then a few sharp drops. It's not going to be a gradual decrease, you're going to have them occasional drops. So we just need to learn to get in there and out there. And as soon as we've got that figured out, we're going to be okay. Just to show you the under 2.5 goal market from the Plymouth Accrington game as well, you can see that although it's a similar bet, it's a similar trade, you want in the game to stay 0-0, be low action, you can see that the market for under 2.5 goals did drop, and did gradually drop as well. It was quite a nice smooth transition, whereas the under 1.5 is quite jittery. So that is the key thing to take away between the difference of these two strategies. So then we got quite close to the 50% mark for Ipswich Oxford, and I decided to take a nice little profit there because I'd saw the odds from the other games and saw how much one goal does kill you off. So we got a nice close to 50% on that one. And then I decided with the Sheffield Gillingham one, it had been quite action packed with the stats. Obviously you'd be able to tell that anyway by how long it took for the odds to drop. So I also, I think, decided to get out of the market here as well for 20p, or at least I got out of the market very soon after this point, just because we got a nice little bit of profit there. And you can see we cashed out of the Sheffield Gillingham game not too long after that, and I think it ended up being a nice 20 or 21p profit from that. So we managed to make a profit from all 3 games. If I quickly show you the graph over here, or the spreadsheet I should say, you can see that with the under 1.5 goal market, we made a 9% profit, a 4% profit and a 25% profit. But I do strongly believe that if a goal goes in, you're going to lose 80-90% of your profit. So I don't think that this is a good strategy at the moment. Do I think we can adjust it and make it so we can get quite a large percentage return? Yes. But do I think it needs a lot of work before we get there? Yes, I do. I think some of the returns you can get, if you could get everyone like this, everyone getting a 25% up to 30 possibly, then it's going to be a lot more workable and usable. But I honestly still think the risk and the loss you get when a goal goes in, it might completely outweigh the purpose of this strategy. So I believe here I'm going to show you guys the MK Dons Cambridge game, and you can just see by the stats there, or by the graph, although we started out at around odds of 5 even, and then started to drop down and got to just below 4 by the looks of things, you can see how much the odds shot up after a goal went in. It went as high as 12.5. Now, this is now a point where I think we could adjust the strategy a little bit as well. I think you could get into this market after a team has gone 1-0 up. Now, this is the one I said where you're probably going to call me really stupid and think this is the worst idea you've ever heard. But I think getting in when it's up at the highest odds up here, depending on how the game is, how energetic the game is, what's going on, how many chances have been, everything like that. If you're watching the game, you'll have a good idea of how it's going. But I honestly think if you can get in at this point up here and then get out about 5 minutes later, if there's been no extra goal, you're going to find some huge profit. So if we got in at the start of the game, we've gone from 5 down to 4. But if we get in at this point, we're probably going to go from 12.5 down to about 8, which will obviously have a huge return on your investment. But then any extra goal that comes, you're going to wipe out your whole liability, which is why this might be a strategy we'd look to implement in the under 2.5 goal section. So we go in after a goal's been scored, when it's high odds, and stay in until we get a nice bit of profit. It's definitely a strategy I'm going to look to explore. It's probably one that's not going to work too well, but I think getting into the under market after a goal's been scored could be hugely profitable if no extra goal gets scored in the next 5-10 minutes. Just to back that up here, it's going to show you the Sheffield Gillingham game where a goal did come eventually in the game. You can see the odds did drop down to about, about 3 there. So they dropped down to about 3. A goal went in, it went up as high as 14, but then it dropped from 14 down to about 8. So you've got quite a few ticks there, quite a lot of opportunity for profit. And if I just try and find the point when the goal went in, you can see the goal went in about 15th, 16th minute there, would you say? And this was the 41st minute. So if you can stay in the market for that 10-15 minutes after a goal's been scored, I think within this market and the under 2.5 goal market, you're really going to see some huge profit. But it's whether or not you think the game selection's right and everything like that. We will have a look into that strategy in a few weeks' time, don't worry. But you can see here, actually, I did do a little bit of a calculation. If you'd got in at that 13.8 mark, or sorry, if you'd got in at that 14 mark in a game, I did have to just use a different random game with different selection here just to try and work out the profit. But if you'd have got in at the odds of 14, waited the 15 minutes, got out at 5.1, you would be looking at an £8 profit. An £8 profit from a £5 stake. Over 100%. So if we can figure out how to get that to work, that strategy is going to be an incredible one. And I think if we possibly pair that, if you're going in with the risk anyway of the under 1.5 goal strategy, where one goal does kill off your trade, I think you're better off waiting for an early goal and then using the under 1.5 goal strategy to try and truly get a huge bit of profit. But then you really are dead in the water if an extra goal goes in. Let me know what you think. It's a bit of an out there strategy. It is incredibly risky, but I think you can get some huge profits from it. We're going to come back in a few weeks, taking a look at the potential of this and the under 2.5 goal strategy after a goal has been scored. We'll trade both the markets in the same games. I'll get 4 or 5 different games going for that one so we can explore it in a bit more detail. I honestly think that one is going to be hugely profitable, but also there is obviously the risk that you can just lose your full stake with that one. So that one is going to be a bit more betting, but I think however we manage the markets, it might end up being a little bit more like a trade. So we're definitely going to give that a go. It's going to be my riskiest strategy yet. This one's probably the riskiest so far, but we'll go on to the next one and upgrade a little bit. So hopefully you'll want to stick around for that. So let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you think it's a load of rubbish, just let me know. I think it probably is as well, but it's worth looking into. Got any recommendations for other strategies? Let me know down below as well. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.